how despicable is this that no one is reporting on this right now anywhere in the mainstream?
This one is personal, so they didn't send one thing through for fact check.
Jillian, do you think any of this would be happening right now if you didn't support some conservative policies? Like, it's hard for me to imagine that they would be going after someone liberal.
When you're getting hate like this, you've done something right.
I went to Brandon Reig, who's now running Netflix, and yet was the executive on the show while it was at NBC. And I went to him and Magdi. Right. Is this looking a little weird?
Okay, that makes it so much worse.
I'm not going to treat Israel as if it's like this special country that gets to do whatever it wants on the international stage. They're carrying out war crimes.
Dude, you can't fight that war without leveling those buildings.
When you have a common enemy, I mean, you get to rally the country behind you. And what did he want to distract people from? His own prosecutions.
I think our support should be conditional. You can't keep stealing land. You can't keep slaughtering innocent people.
You mean I'm going to post something or say something that's going to make a difference in that conflict that's been going on since Moses had a parting of the ways with the Pharaoh? And get the Israeli military to be like, we got to wrap this up. These kids are going to school.
All right, team, we are all over the map today. I'm at an Airbnb in Wyoming, Anna's in LA, Lindy's in Philadelphia, Amy's in Fort Lauderdale, and we have a very special guest. Bryan, are you in Austin right now?
I am in Austin, Texas right now. My horse is tethered, not 5 feet from me right now. So.
I love that. Okay, I don't have a horse tethered outside, but I do have a dog and a couple of cats that might jump into the mix here. For anybody who does not know, our guest today is Bryan Callen. He's a veteran stand-up comedian and podcaster who first broke out on Mad TV.
I know.
Wow.
I know, original cast member. What can I say?
That's awesome. And of course, you've got a huge following. And you now currently host a podcast called Off Limits. You're headlining a national tour. You're kind of a big deal. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
It's good to be here. I'm a fan of you guys, so.
Well, thank you very much. All right, Bryan and everybody else, here is what is up for today. The Biggest Loser documentary, the takedown of Jillian Michaels. Very bizarre speaking about myself in the third person, but I wanted to give it that like dramatic effect. And then it seems that I'm not the only one in the crosshairs. We've got death threats against Ana, and we're going to get into the social media accounts that are targeting her, the Canary Mission's role in that, and of course, what this clash reveals about the fractured left in general. Then we've got leaked IDF documents. So internal reports apparently reveal that civilian deaths in Gaza may not have been accidents. So who signed off on this? How deep does it go? We know Anna's digging into that one. We've got an unprecedented move in Washington. Federal agents raided the home of former National Security Advisor John Bolton. What did they seize? Why now? And what does this say about deepening power wars in D.C.? Lindy's going to take us through that. BlackRock's Larry Fink takes over the World Economic Forum. What could go wrong? Amy, thanks for bringing that to my attention, Amy. Florida slams California as a crime sanctuary after personally hauling back an undocumented suspect in a triple killing. Of course, Newsom fires back and the coastal state showdown has begun. So we're going to start with the Netflix hit job because this one is personal. So I'm guessing you guys have all heard about this by now, this Biggest Loser documentary. Can I presume that, team?
Yes, I texted y'all about it. I remember when we got done with taping last week, I went home to cut time codes and it was popped up as like number 3 on my Netflix suggested, recommended. So,
okay. So long story short, this documentary, I can't figure out yet who funded it because it's become so absolutely bizarre, but it wasn't Netflix as far as I can tell. So it was a project that was funded, even though it was commissioned by Netflix by somebody else. It wasn't produced by any of the Biggest Loser executive producers who are exceptionally upset about the documentary because they feel that it's unbelievably inaccurate. Now, with that said, I, for some reason, am the only one in the crosshairs of this documentary, which I find a little bizarre. So we're going to start with a few things about this that I want you guys to keep in mind. There are 8 contestants in this documentary, of which I trained 4 of them. So Hannah and Olivia are the 2 sisters who are actually doing great. And I did a podcast with them in January that you can watch on my show, Keeping It Real, with a bunch of contestants that are still doing great, like Michelle Aguilar, Pete Thomas, so on and so forth. Danny Cahill was on it. He was trained by Bob and myself simultaneously. And then a season 1 contestant from over 20 years ago named Ryan Benson. There were 424 people, by the way, on Biggest Loser, contestants on Biggest Loser. And they chose 8, of which I trained 4. Now, with that said, I trained probably 150 of those 424 contestants, and 35% have kept the weight off, except for some reason, none of them seem to make it into this documentary, which is considerably higher than the average. So 95% of individuals who lose a large amount of weight put it back on. So 35% success rate is actually great, unprecedented. Now, we're going to start by dispelling some of the lies in this because they're so egregious and insane. I don't even really know where to begin. The one thing I do want to say is Ana was kind enough to kind of, all of you are too young to even remember the show, except maybe you and I, Brian. But the long story short is that, Ana's like, well, we're judging this through a lens now that, we wouldn't go back and apply 20 years ago. But with that said, I wouldn't change a thing. But I'm not actually answering to what was done or why it was done. Mm-hmm. I'm just answering things that aren't even the truth. So we're going to start with one of the top ones, is that I apparently said to this contestant, Ryan Benson, who is the season 1, that he's going to make me a millionaire. So he's like, I pissed blood at the Finale Medical, which the Finale Medical is under the supervision of Dr. Huizenga, who's the doctor that I have been at war with for years, right? So this doctor is responsible for the contestants. We don't see them after they go home. We weren't even allowed to speak with them after they went home at that time. So I had no role in this guy supposedly pissing blood, nor did I ever hear about it, and I wouldn't have known about it. And he goes on to tell the lie that I say to him at the finale. I jump into his arms and I say, Ryan, you're going to make me a millionaire. Well, number one, I'm mic'd. Ryan's mic'd. You can actually watch the hug for a second because they cut away from it. In the documentary, I never said that. It would be on camera if I said it. And then I have, so that, ready for this? Here's where this starts to get interesting. So as people are beginning to print the story, 2 of the executive producers, so this is Dave Broom, sent statements to my business partner to put into these publications when they reached out for comment. Like, Jillian never said this. She was mic'd. So this one's from Dave Broom, emailing his statement to my business partner, John Carlo. And then the next one, this one is from Mark Coops, who is also an executive producer. And it's like, Jillian never said this, right? So both of them send in these statements. Nobody was willing to print that. So I think that's a little odd. It's like, you asked for a statement. We're telling you it never happened. We're giving you proof that it never happened, but you won't print the statements from the executive producers. The second thing is that I never communicated with the doctor. Not only did I communicate with the doctor, can you pull up the Daily Medical Report email, Connor? I just sent one of them. So it's actually the one you showed me when we were prepping for the episode. And there was a daily report every single day between the doctor's medical team and myself and all the producers. So if you look here, I'm going to open this up. You can see that it says BL9 medical report 10/12/09. I'm on it. Dr. Huizenga is on it. Bob's on it. And you can see here all of the different rundowns of each and every contestant, right? Every single day we would correspond about the health of the contestants. Then if you're like, well, Jillian didn't continue to communicate. I have, by the way, hundreds of these emails. Can you pull up the Elijah email between Dr. Huizenga and I, Connor? So we would go back and forth constantly about each and every contestant. Let's see if you can find this one. And I pulled a couple, but I sent Connor, 100 emails. So check this one out. So this is, from Dr. Huizenga, but if you look below it, it's from me, okay? This is on a Sunday. Hi all, sorry to bother you on a Sunday. I was just hoping that maybe we can check on Elijah Vivio's labs again. He's working out 2 hours a day and supposedly eating 1,400 calories a day and losing next to nothing every week, though I thought maybe he was hypothyroid or something. Huizenga answers me. I'll give you another example, even though this is going to get pretty boring. Can you pull up the one between Dr. Huizenga, Sandy Crum, who's his staff, and myself on Danny Cahill, who happened to be one of the contestants on the podcast. Let's see if we can pull that one up. I hit Connor with probably 100 emails last night, and this is going to get kind of old. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because the doctor claims that I just went rogue and didn't listen to him at all, and essentially, did whatever I wanted with the contestants. So we had daily communications and individual communications about each and every contestant that I ever worked with. Here's me. We're going back and forth about a contestant that hit their head during a challenge. And I'm asking, is the contestant okay? Are they able to train? And I'm going back and forth with Dr. Huizenga, and I'm like, all right, maybe I'm just being paranoid because I was worried about the contestant's health. Next, we're going to move on. I hope I've just spelled that one effectively, but I could literally put, I don't know, as mentioned, 100 emails of this nature.
So to be clear, there's communication that was readily available to the producers of this docuseries that disproved this notion that you didn't care about the well-being of the contestants.
Right. Hundreds of them. Not to mention, we sent an email. My lawyer sent an email to Netflix and the producers saying, you better fact check everything through us. They didn't send one thing through for fact check. Okay. Wow. Now, caffeine. Let's get into that one. So Dr. Huizenga just told TMZ that the show was caffeine free. Not only was the show not caffeine free, they would drink endless amounts of coffee, which was a huge problem for me because caffeine is actually a really powerful tool, especially when it comes to fitness. It's a performance enhancer. It's great for stabilizing blood sugar level. It's got a lot of different benefits. With that said, too much caffeine is counterintuitive. Just like everything, it's a U-shaped curve, right? And there's a Goldilocks zone, and it's about 400 milligrams a day. You don't want more. And with coffee, of course, you've got pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, mold, all kinds of other crap that you don't want in it. So I've always been pro what you now call pre-workout, but back in the day, they were literally called fat burners. I've written about this since my second book 18 years ago called Making the Cut. And I have put out numerous products, and I even co-created one to this day called Metabolism Plus with a PhD in nutrition science that Align Natural sells. So now, first, let's look at the show's caffeine free. Can we bring up the contestants grocery email, Connor? So this one says contestants groceries email, and it's got a little PDF with all the different groceries in it, and there are 4 different caffeinated beverages on there. Take a look, keep looking for it. And then what I'm going to subsequently pull up is that not only was the show not caffeine free, we were allowed in numerous seasons to use fat burners, which they're calling caffeine pills, but there's a lot more in them than just caffeine. There's beetroot powder, there's capsaicin, there's Ceylon cinnamon, there's all kinds of stuff in there that's good for your health and great for athletic performance. That's totally legal, over the counter. A 5-year-old could buy it and take it. Obviously, there's probably more caffeine in the sodas that they're drinking. If you don't see it, Connor, I can drop it to you in post, and we can. I
have a quick question while Connor's looking for that, Jillian. So I remember The Biggest Loser. I wasn't a regular viewer. I think I caught episodes here and there, but in terms of what the audience was told, was the audience aware that caffeine or fat burners were?
Great question. Okay, ready?
Yeah. Yes.
So in the episode of Question, right? Mm-hmm. I end up getting in a fight with this doctor because, and I'll pull up the emails for you. I sent him 100 of them. I get in a fight with him because he then takes away in the middle of the season their ability to use these fat burners. And I'm like, why are you doing this again? We've been through this season after season after season. And it wasn't just that. He would just randomly pull electrolytes, magnesium. I'll show it to you in the emails. And I reached out to the executive producer and the showrunner. And what they're neglecting to tell you is that Dr. Huizenga wasn't in charge of the contestants' diets. It was a registered dietitian named Cheryl Forberg, who somehow was not even mentioned once on the documentary, who I communicated with regularly and actually had a relationship with. And she had approved them, and then he turned around and pulled them. And long story short, this is actually the one thing that I did do wrong and took full responsibilities. I was like, I don't agree with you, think you're wrong, and I'm going to continue doing it anyway.
Got it.
So this was the season, I can't remember which season because they've been approved for all the previous seasons, right? And Bob, by the way, is like, I never had anything to do with this. I never gave them, caffeine pills. Danny Cahill, we both trained. I have an email from the show's team that I'm going to put up for you right now asking which fat burners we want to buy. And the stackers that they talk about in this documentary were Bob's product of choice. I had my own fat burner at the time. So, and the great irony of that one is that I got sued despite the fact that it was all dismissed for saying that the products didn't work. So it's like, hold on, they're either methamphetamine in this documentary, or I've been equally criticized because I supported a product that supposedly was a sham and didn't work. So you're going to have to pick which evil you want to pursue here. So since we can't find the contestants' emails, and Anna, in the episode, what I say to answer your question is, I'm like, I think this is much better than unlimited amounts of caffeine and endless cups of coffee, and that's why I made this choice. So that's
interesting.
That's in the show. Okay, now contestants' diets. Can we scroll down, Connor? So this is if you look back, let's go all the way to the bottom of this.
While he's pulling it up, could I say something real quick?
Yep.
What I found so utterly ridiculous about this entire thing as I was watching it, and I know you said that you only trained like 4 of the 8. I didn't know exactly how many people you had trained or how that was being portrayed at all. All I saw was majority very skinny people who were complaining, which to me absolutely blew my mind. You went through a process and it freaking worked, and you're sitting here on the other end of it complaining about the methodology used. Not only is it insane because you actually achieved results and it looks like sustainable lifelong results, and Jill, I'm glad that you clarified. You said at least, I believe it was 30% of them were able to keep it off, which is upward of the standard for the industry. That is absolutely incredible. But the other piece to that I just couldn't believe is this show went on for a really long time.
Yeah.
I watched it. It was one of the core staples within my family's nightly viewing TV programs. Not only did it actually help and motivate my sister to lose weight, by the way, she actually lost 30 kilograms. I'm still not sure what that exactly translates to in pounds, but
that's 64 pounds, 65 pounds.
Wow.
So that actually, your show really motivated her. And by the way, everyone was motivated by this show because of you. Everyone, honestly, that I knew at least tuned in for you, Jillian. But all of the people who were there on it, who are now complaining, dude, there are like 18 seasons of this thing. Unless you were literally a contestant from season 1. Season 1, and I know you mentioned that was one of them, okay? You knew what you were signing up for. It is television, and you literally knew what you were signing up for because you watched it before. So I find it so utterly ridiculous. I'm sure Connor's found the email and we can jump back to my thoughts about what this truly is, because I believe that this is a smear against you, Jillian.
I want to get into kind of where this goes, but I have to, at this point, at first I was like, okay, who cares about this? Like, why does this matter? It's 11 years old. No one's going to care. This is an 11-year-old show relitigating shit that has already been out there for over a decade. Mm-hmm. And not only that, for some reason, we don't know, we can't get to the bottom of who actually funded it. No fact checking was done. No publications will print, except for TMZ, will print any of the statements from the executive producers or any of the emails. And I mean, it's very bizarre. So Connor, did you find out when it says contestant diets email? Okay, so in this email, it says Julianne Harris, coordinating producer, NBC's The Biggest Loser. All right, now, can you scroll up, Connor, for a second? Perfect, stop right there. All right, so this is from Julie Harris to myself, right? And then if you look, all the other producers are gonna be on this as we keep going. So she says, we received the books and we'll be giving them out today. So these are my books. Sandy, who's Dr. Huizenga's guy on the set, has the Electro Mix, which are electrolytes, bicarb. Do you want stacker 2 or 3? I'll have it for them first thing in the morning. They would buy it for them. I then respond to her and I'm like, honey, can you go to GNC? I meant to say, and get my Fat Burner Extreme instead, or I can have it sent, but it'll take a while. You see Mark Coops at NBC Universal. You see Todd Lubin, who is the showrunner. You see Adam Kalustian, who was a producer. And you see Bob, and you see Sandy's email, which is hard to make out at the bottom, but he works for Dr. Huizenga. So not only were they allowed to have unlimited amounts of caffeine, if you click on contestant groceries email that you've got up there, see that one at the very top, Click on that one. There's a PDF on that one. This is from Will Herb. Okay. So you've got ground dark roast coffee, unsweetened cocoa butter, Starbucks coffee, energy, green tea, organic. So this is from the doctor who says that they were not allowed to have caffeine on the show. Here's a grocery list.
Wow.
Okay.
This is so positive for you, Jillian. I'm sorry. From a guy on the outside looking in, if I'm your lawyer, number one, you have receipts. Number two, think about The Biggest Loser. I see your face. Number three, when you're getting hate like this, you've done something right. because you can't have a documentary without having a villain. Who do you choose? The most famous person on The Biggest Loser, the most relevant person. You know, Houdini said, if you're gonna mention my name in the press, whether it's good or bad, make sure you spell my name right. So if I'm your publicist, if I'm your lawyer, I'm smiling ear to ear because you've got a case here. But on top of the fact that really, at the end of the day, nobody cares. I know you're getting hate on the internet, but nobody cares. It just makes you more relevant. At the end of the day, you were on a show for, 18 seasons and made a real difference in people's lives, and you're still relevant. Why is it when I think of The Biggest Losers, the only thing I see is a large person who then becomes small and Jillian Michaels? What's going on with that? So congratulations.
Jillian,
Yeah.
to Bryan's point, I think that's actually such a compelling reason for this documentary. Bob Harper is seeing you make you have such a vibrant career now, and where is he? And I actually just searched him up a couple of days ago. Almost all of the coverage pre-documentary on him has been overwhelmingly negative. I think he was looking for somebody to blame, honestly. Like he was trying to vilify you in order to take the heat off himself.
I don't know. I'll get to Bob in a second, actually, but there's just 2 more emails I want to show you. So this one is when Dr. Huizenga removed the fat burners. Okay. So this is the season in question when Jillian, went rogue and gave them methamphetamine caffeine pills. So can you pull up the one that says OTC weight loss products? And it's with myself and the doctor. Okay. So here's me to Dr. Huizenga, by the way, with all the producers on the show and Bob. So he goes, in addition to the issues of fairness and the lack of clinical proof or efficacy, this is a compelling reason why, as the physician of the show, I must recommend that no over-the-counter, and it was going to say weight loss products or pharmaceutical weight loss products are allowed on the campus. Nobody used pharmaceutical weight loss products, by the way. I then responded and say, are we really starting this again? Question mark, question mark, question mark. We already approved last season and there were no issues. So contrary to the, we never allowed this lie, not only did he allow it, his team distributed them. The show purchased them. They were allowed unlimited amounts of coffee. And this was a season in question where I was like, I don't agree with you and I'm going rogue. One more email, and there are many, but actually 2. Now, can you pull up the one that's I put for you question email, Connor? And this is with Cheryl Forberg and Lisa Hennessy. So the show's dietitian and the show's showrunner. And in this email, I basically say to them, they're having unlimited amounts of coffee. I want to give them e-boost, which was another kind of fat burner with green tea and coffee. And the show's dietitian is like, this looks amazing. I want some. So,
wow.
Right.
Jillian, do you think any of this would be happening right now if you didn't support some conservative policies? It's hard for me to imagine that they would be going after someone liberal.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I want to get to it, but I'm wondering, is this overkill? Because I was waiting for Connor to pull this up. I even have an email. Okay, hold on. That one. Open that sucker up. Okay, stop. That's the show's registered dietitian. Dr. Huizenga had nothing to do with the contestants' diets, okay? Total lie. She's the one that I worked with all the time on the contestants' diets, and Lisa Hennessy was the showrunner. So go to the very bottom of this, will you, Connor? Okay, so this is where I'm saying, can we bring e-boost into the house? This is the same season that he pulled the fat burners, right? So he said no. He was responding to this same season. It's all natural, less caffeine than coffee, has antioxidants, electrolytes, quercetin, way better than them pounding coffee. So not only did I say it in the show, I've said it in numerous emails to the show's dietitian. Okay, will you scroll up for me all the way to the top? Okay, so then Cheryl responds and she's like, I want some too. Jade, does the B12 or any of the other ingredients make you jumpy at all? And of course, she's like, approved it, and then Dr. Huizenga, this is the season where he says no. So like, this is all a lie. I'll give you one more lie here, and this will be my last one. Can you open the one that says Danny Cahill email supplements? So this is a contestant that's in the documentary, right? And he's like, they gave me caffeine pills. What they cut out is the they he's referring to is Dr. Huizenga's medical staff. And the reason that I have this email is because when we did this whole episode of Jillian cheated, because despite the fact that they're allowed to have caffeine, she's not allowed to give it to them, right? So I got the emails from the contestants to prove that in all previous seasons, this was allowed and given to them by the doctor. So this is 2010. So because we went through this, the following season, I had all the receipts that these were given to contestants by the medical staff. So I said, hey, gorgeous, can you tell me who distributed the fat burners to you and all the other contestants during season 8? I'm trying to remember if it was Sandy, who worked for Dr. Huizenga, or casting. Okay, now go to the top. Here's Danny. So he's in the documentary. When we first got them, they were kept in Sandy's office. Sandy is again, the doctor's medical office on set. Sandy runs it. We were told to get only two per day. And at some point, the casting crew took them and distributed enough for a few days at a time. Stay safe. I hope you're okay. I've seen that crap about you getting sued. What a crock. Don't fret. And call me if you ever want to vent. So ready? The part that I was getting sued for is that the fat burners didn't work. Again, they were all dismissed.
Look, I mean, Jillian, you've got to, like, you can get into all this nitty gritty. You have, right. This is what you say. It's all bad fiction. And I have the receipts. Hope to see you in court or whatever. And then just leave it at that.
Yeah.
That's what you say. Bad. Because it is. And you don't need to go into the deep. No, wait. Like,
I wasn't going to, but the girls were like, drop a bunch in the show. And I could put literally, okay, long story short, I could put emails with their calorie allowances, which were not 800 calories. I even had one on my Instagram showing that I told Olivia to eat 1,600 calories. And we weren't able to email them regularly. But when the contestants would go home during the holidays, they were still on the show. So we could email them and they would then go back to the ranch. I have emails back and forth with production that they're not eating enough. Dr. Huizenga, this is a guy that allowed them to have dip, Ambien, that will pull them on and off their medications. And I couldn't stand him. And I repeatedly asked for another doctor on the show. I have all those emails. Rachel Fredrickson, who is the one that came in looking, honestly, like dangerously thin. In this documentary, they try to make it look like I trained her. I never trained her once. I have all the proof of that. They try to make it look like I gave her caffeine pills. I never gave her anything. I never even worked with her. And this is kind of important. I went to Brandon Reig, who's now running Netflix and is the one who put this on the air and yet was the executive on the show while it was at NBC. And I went to him and Magdi. Right. Is this looking a little weird?
Okay, that makes it so much worse because this proves that at this point, okay, Jillian, let's get to the part where we all say what everyone's thinking, that this is a complete and total smear job on the fact that you are taking off right now in an area that is very different to what they wanted you to be in. And as soon as you started speaking out and saying that Ozempic was bad, you couldn't be big and beautiful you couldn't be beautiful at any size. You need to actually be healthy. And you were speaking common sense to their woke liberal garbage. They have hated you since then. And they hate you even more now as your platform is strengthening. And this is so clearly a smear job against you.
So let me just say, I don't even think this has anything to do with a liberal smear job. I feel like this is so indicative of this industry where, rather than being innovative and coming up with new, interesting content, why don't we go back 20 years and bring up one of the, hit television shows of the time and judge it based on today's standards. Like the thing about that show, Jillian, is the issues I had with it, you had nothing to do with, right? So like your style of training was like, and I remember what was in at that time when you go to the gym and when you take classes, that like boot camp style in your face training was what people were like seeking out. And so when I see those scenes of you training people hard, I'm just like, is she being judged by that right now? Because I feel like people are missing the fact that that was very much in vogue back then. Some people like to train that way. I personally don't, but let's like stop infantilizing these contestants as if they're like children. They're not children, they're adults. The stuff that I didn't like, though, I will admit, is like some of the challenges, right? Which I felt were degrading, but the producers came up with those challenges. You didn't come up with those challenges. Like the stuff with the cake and the bread in their mouths as they're doing like these challenges. I didn't love that.
You're right not to love it. And it was one of the top reasons that I was on and off the show season after season after season. I complained about it publicly. I literally left the show over it. And if you notice in the later seasons, there are no temptations anymore. That's why, because I wouldn't come back if they had continued to have temptations. And we were never producers. But to speak about the aggressive part of the training style, here's the part, by the way, they took out all the heart-to-heart talks, all of the interviews where I explained what I was doing. And here's the reason. This was a life or death intervention on a ticking clock because these people would go home in a week, 2 weeks, and I needed 3 things to happen if there was ever going to be any hope of them maintaining this. Number one, they needed a rock bottom moment. You need a moment where what you're doing is more painful than the work and associated with the changes that need to be made. And that's why it's like, take a look, you're dying, your kids worry every night you're going to die, you can't even get up the stairs. Like you really want them to feel the extreme pain of this lifestyle so that they are like, okay, actually, this is hell. Actually, I'm terrified. I can't even walk for 15 minutes without vomiting. Like, I'm willing to do the work to get better because that's less painful than where I am right now. The second thing is that you need them to take responsibility. So while at one stage or another, people are victims of many different things, right? And when you're dealing with somebody who's 100 pounds overweight, 200 pounds overweight, it isn't because they like Twinkies. It's because they're using food as a coping mechanism, as a defense structure. It provides them with something so significant that at one time or another, it meant their psychological survival. So for example, if I was raped and I put on 100 extra pounds, it's arguably because I'm trying to subconsciously desexualize and put on a literal defense structure around my body. So you were a victim of that. But now, if you don't take responsibility for how you chose to react to it, you're fundamentally disempowered to change it. And it feels great to be a victim, but as a victim, you are not empowered to make any different choices. So that needs to happen, and that's really uncomfortable and unhappy for them. And then the third thing is they need an achievement. So if I like I'm lazy, I'm weak, I'm fat, I'm pathetic, I'm all those things, all the stories that they've been told their entire lives, and the things that you believe impact how you behave, which beget the outcome, and it's this vicious cycle. So you need that person to run that mile or do that first push-up. And when these things occur and they have these achievements they never thought they could have, it opens up this infinity of possibility of what else can I do? And maybe all these things I believed are false. So the screaming and the yelling was a sledgehammer in a suite of tools that I would utilize. And I would utilize it, A, to get them to feel the pain of what they've been doing, and B, to circumvent that narrative of I'm weak, I'm lazy, I'm fat, I can't do it, and literally terrify them into doing it, because what was left was, oh my God, I just ran that mile. But none of that gets like shown or explained in the documentary. And none of the other tools, the hugs, the 3-hour talks, the round the clock time that I would spend, none of that made it into the show. So long story short is what I think's going on, and Bryan, you're totally right. It's basically, it's a hit job. But what I think is going on, if I had to guess, is this and all this other weird shit that they're trying to dredge up. I think maybe it is a smear campaign by the industries I'm going after, like big ag, big pharma, big insurance. That's what I have to think, because it's more than just digging up a show I left 11 years ago and manipulating it. It's like the craziest stuff that you're having to dispel, and then the refusal to print some of this stuff along with the articles. That's what I think, but I don't know.
Jillian, I want to say, even if this didn't start as a political smear job, it has become one. People have latched onto it, especially in light of what happened on CNN, when I think they also ambushed you and didn't really give you a chance to articulate your views. So a lot of people have like hopped on the bandwagon. So there are twin coalitions here, the people, who are dedicated to The Biggest Loser, and then people, the liberals, who are mad that you've articulated some conservative views. So right now you have like a coalition trying to take you down, and because you're so resentful that you're incredibly successful and your staying power isn't just a few years, it's at this point it's decades long.
Yeah.
Just being explained the psychology around weight gain. There's no way you could know that on that detail unless you were genuinely emotionally and intellectually vested in trying to get somebody to lose weight. I was just listening to the way you were talking about that. And you're clearly an expert on not just the physicality that goes into losing weight, but also the psychology that goes into that. And that comes from a place of compassion. That's what drives it. That's very apparent, at least to me. So, look, your example speaks volumes, and this is noise. I do think there are forces out there that are organized to hit at people they see as threats.
There sure are.
That's the way it is. So, okay.
Yep.
The last thing I want to say about that before we move on, Bryan, is I'll never forget when they were going after Rogan about ivermectin.
I remember.
And somebody cut a montage together of him saying the N-word when he was like quoting.
They've done that with me. They've done the same thing with me. And I was saying it in the context of quoting despicable racists that I was condemning, but I didn't want to sanitize their quote. This is like the last time we did it was all the way back in like 2011 or 2012. The standards were different. That's what I'm saying. Like judging the conduct of how you delivered the news even like decades ago by today's standards is ridiculous. And to cut like a video together, like a montage of someone just saying the N-word repeatedly without the context is so disgusting.
And I remember
and Rogan was always. I've known Rogan for 30 years. And we did the first time I met him, he guest starred on Mad TV, and then I played his brother on news radio, and we were very close. And he was a Boston kid, Jersey kid, and I remember one time I said to him, I've never heard a racist word out of your mouth or really anything about somebody else's color. And he said, never made sense to me. I've been around a lot of dumb white people as well. He's always been an equal opportunity across the board.
Oh my God.
Love it.
And of course they knew that.
Of course they did. And to take the time. And I just remember thinking, who put this together?
It's never been different, Jillian. Look, Abe Lincoln during his campaign was likened to a chimpanzee. You can look at they had all these drawings and stuff. If you're famous, if you're doing well, you're a target. When you fly that close to the sun, here it comes, and you're doing something right. You think Rogan doesn't get a lot of hate still? Believe me.
I remember the Daryl Cooper thing that I did his show when he was in the middle of all the Rogan is platforming anti-Semites, and he's horrible for the. He was going through it at that time, but nevertheless, I hope that I've given you some idea and some proof. I mean, there's obviously hundreds of these emails, and we're deciding right now if it's worth a court case, because I am suing a couple different people, and that's going to drop imminently. And there's finite resources for this. So you kind of got to wonder, is this enough, or do I need to go after Netflix as well? And we're in the middle of looking at all of my old Biggest Loser contracts, and long story short, we're looking at it. But we're gonna move on. I hope that was enough, guys, that I provided you with enough context and proof that this is none of this was true. But it seems like I'm not the only one in the crosshairs here. Ana, you're getting actual death threats. Wow.
Yes. I mean, look, getting death threats is kind of part of the job to some extent. But I noticed that I was getting this massive influx of very specific death threats in my DMs, some emails. And I was just like, what's going on? Because obviously this tends to happen when there's some sort of campaign against you or there's a group targeting you. And so I did a little bit of digging, and I found out that the group that started targeting me with social media posts was Canary Mission, which is one of these pro-Israel groups. And they really do spend much of their time, targeting specific critics of Israel. And I want to be clear, critics of Israel. They then smear them as like anti-Semites, even though the individuals, myself included, are very careful to say the Israeli government, this is what Israel's doing. Do not, make this a commentary about the Jews. In fact, I've spoken out against that, as you ladies know. I'm not going to get into details, but there was a guest pitched for our show who I find to be an issue in regard to anti-Semitism. And I think I was like the most vocal one in not wanting to have that person on. Anyway, so with that background in mind, here's a look at what the Canary Mission is. I did talk about it on TYT. And then after we come back from the video, I'll explain a little more. They have a website essentially doxing anybody who's been critical of Israel. And I think that they're particularly gross. If you go on their website, they also target other organizations, and news organizations are included in there, including Students for Justice in Palestine, Students United for Palestinian Equal Rights. Ooh, I can't have that. Jewish Voice for Peace is also a target of the Canary Mission. AJ Plus, Al Jazeera English, Al Jazeera Media Network. Anyone simply associated or part of the BDS movement is also a target. And you'll go on their website and they list people's identity. And even though no one's committed any crimes, no one's done anything wrong, most of these people haven't even said a single thing that's pro-Hamas or anti-Semitic, doesn't matter. The mere fact that these people have been critical of Israel's genocide and slaughter campaign in Gaza and the West Bank, by the way, becomes a target. As you can see, they target even Jewish Americans who are critical of what Israel is doing right now in Gaza and the West Bank, by the way. And so this organization has targeted others, including that Tufts University student who was here with a student visa, Rumiesa Ozturk. The reason why they targeted her specifically was because she co-wrote an article, an op-ed in the student newspaper. I mean, if it's in the student newspaper, you can imagine it's not going to say disgusting anti-Semitic things. All it did was criticize what Israel's doing and bring up the possibility of divesting from companies that are assisting Israel in carrying out, mass slaughter in Gaza, annexation in the West Bank, stuff like that. So here's how I responded to the Canary Mission targeting me. And I welcome their hatred because I think what they do is disgusting. I think what they provide cover for will go down in history as one of the worst genocides in human history. And I live in the United States of America. I'm an American. I'm proud to be an American. I'm not an Israeli. There's no law on the books that indicates that I have to support Israel in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, as Israel continues its genocide against the Palestinian people, I will continue to speak out against them, unafraid. Okay, so clearly I'm not going to allow anyone to censor me, and I'm not going to allow fake false smears of me allegedly being an anti-Semite scare me or intimidate me from telling the truth. And by the way, I should note, look, the federal government has even admitted working closely with Canary Mission to punish critics of Israel. So Peter Hatch, an agent with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, said the department had assembled a specialized group dubbed a Tiger Team to work on removing pro-Palestine college students from the country, which everyone should be outraged on or about, regardless of where you stand on this issue. Because if you're simply protesting, or if you simply have an ideology, but you're doing no harm from believing what you believe or protesting what you're protesting, you should have the right to do it. But in this case, if you're critical of Israel's, assault on the Palestinian people in Gaza, this group will work with the federal government to try to do away with you if you're here with a student visa. Now, Peter Hatch indicated to the court that some tips about students were communicated verbally before explaining that the team had also combed through nearly 5,000 profiles that Canary Mission had compiled of Israel's critics. Wow. And so if you go on their website, they basically have like a hit list of people, myself included, that get targeted by unhinged maniacs who want to like literally kill you. And I'll get to some of the death threats in a minute. Now, Haaretz, which is an Israeli newspaper, recently revealed that Israel is using the information found on the Canary Mission site to ban entry into the country of some people or some of the people the website follows. So that's really what's going on. But like I said, I welcome their hatred because I'm an American. And as an American, I have the right to be as critical of a foreign government or my own government as I want to be. So their targeting has led to these serious threats. I'm going to go through some of them. By the way, here are the public comments about me, toward me, on one of Canary Mission's social media posts. So one person says, "You will meet your demise for all the unjust damage you have caused, just like Candace Owens. It will be your turn soon. Those who hurt Jewish nation historically, whether collectively or individually, receive their brutal karma sooner or later. Your time will be up soon." Oh, wow. What is that supposed to mean? Here's a more simple message. Slaughter you, bitch. Again, these are the public comments on one of the posts. Here's another one. "I will kick your ass if I see you, bitch. Go to Gaza, bitch. Let's see. You are a Nazi, bitch. F you." And
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
There's more.
I love Bryan going in on this one because it's so funny. I feel like we need a comedian to address this first.
Well, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, but I think I lived in the Middle East for 8 years of my life, and grew up around Palestinians, Lebanese people. I was in Saudi Arabia. I've been to Israel. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Israeli. But, I think that it's very important to understand that when Israel wages a war, part of that war has to be also how people view that war. This war has been very, very hard on and very bad for the Jewish diaspora for the most part.
I agree.
I've never in my lifetime seen the kind of anti-Semitism that is going on now mainstream among. And Ana, you've been very passionate about this. I've watched you, and it's because you just can't help yourself because you're thinking about all the children dying and the number of civilians, and 70% of Gaza looks like the surface of the moon. You're allowed to fall to your knees, say a prayer. You're allowed to fall to your knees and weep for children and people who had nothing to do with this conflict who happen to be Palestinians or Arabs of the Levant. You're allowed to do that without being called an anti-Semite. I do also think it's important, though, that could help maybe check your passion, which is probably going to be impossible. But sometimes I try to put myself in the point of view, in the personage of somebody who is Jewish, for example, or Israeli. This is much more than a war for a lot of
Yes, I
it's
agree.
much more than a war for a lot of Jews. This is existential. This is a fight for survival. When people have a problem with Zionists, well, Zionists they go like this. They basically say, so where are we supposed to go? After World War II, they didn't want us that way, that way, that way, or that way. We had one place to go. The sun-baked earth with no resources of a little patch of land called Israel. If that was the promised land, God forgot to put oil on it. Put oil all over everywhere, all around everything, but they've got swamps and some minerals from the Dead Sea.
Right.
So let's figure out how to make
I think part of the problem is, and look, I think that there are a lot of Israeli people who have bought what I believe is that cover story, right? Because for me, it's not about like, Israel it shouldn't exist. I don't believe in its right to exist. I've never once said anything to indicate that I was supportive of what Hamas did. And I understood that after October 7th, Israel obviously was going to respond to it. My bigger problem now that we have almost 2 years of this, going on. And by the way, I agree with you. I don't think that it's a war. I think it's a genocide. I don't think Netanyahu has ever really had any interest in getting the hostages back. Netanyahu is the same guy who did felicitate the funding of Hamas. He propped Hamas up specifically to discredit the Palestinian Authority, because the Palestinian Authority was actually playing by the rules. They were cooperating and collaborating with the Israeli government because they wanted to live in peace side by side with Israel. Now, the PA obviously governs the West Bank, the West Bank had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with October 7th. But as we all know at this point, Israel is now building thousands of illegal settlements there. Right after October 7th, Israel allowed the settlers to essentially rain terror on the Palestinian people, drive them out of their homes in the West Bank. Again, West Bank had nothing to do with October 7th. But I believe that Netanyahu propped up Hamas, okay, not only to discredit the PA, so there would never be a formation of a Palestinian state, but specifically because it would create the perfect excuse for him to carry out what's in the Likud's charter. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu is in the Likud party. If you read the Likud's charter, they believe in the Greater Israel Project. And Netanyahu, by the way, said during an interview with an Israeli channel, I-24 News, that he does believe in and is pursuing the Greater Israel Project, which expands the land that Israel has, certainly past, Green Line Israel into Gaza and the West Bank, but also to parts of Syria, parts of Jordan. It's this expansionist policy that is going to drag the United States in this costly war on behalf of a foreign country that really, it's trying to expand its empire. And I want to know, why are the American citizens responsible for essentially helping a foreign country build its military, build its empire, to the detriment of Jewish people across the world, by the way, and to the detriment of the American people who are really struggling here, but yet we are expected to pay for these weapons and these bombs and, guns, everything you can imagine for the IDF. I think it's unacceptable. So I have moral issues with it, considering how many innocent people have been killed already. And I have issues with the fact that, we have an administration run by a president who purported to be America first, but he's sending over quite a few of our resources to wars abroad, including for what Israel's doing right now. That's my issue. And I think I should be allowed to be as critical of that as possible.
Well, you are, and so are Israelis. I mean, one of the great things about Israel is it is democracy. And I promised you, within Netanyahu's own cabinet, they have arguments and shouting matches. The strength of that nation is that it's always been about debate. Moses argued with God, for God's sake. I mean, when I think about this whole Gaza war, man, Gaza was mentioned in the Old Testament, I think 22 times. And it was the land of the Philistines. This goes back, every time people talk about that, and I watch your passion, and man, I really appreciate it. I just think to myself, man, like my friend said, you should use your platform to speak up about the Israeli Gaza war. And I said, you mean I'm going to post something or say something that's going to make a difference in that conflict that's been going on since Moses had a parting of the ways with the Pharaoh? And this is what these college kids at Harvard and Columbia, you think their aggressive shadow dancing and drum circles are going to get the Israeli military to be like, we got to wrap this up. These kids are going to school. So this from so many Israelis is truly an existential struggle. And it may seem, Anna, like I understand what you're saying, divesting and things like that. But if Israel doesn't have American support, if it doesn't have the support of the West, they go away. And I think it's very important to understand that mindset. Look,
I think our support should be conditional. And the condition is you can't do this expansionist policy. You can't keep stealing land. You can't keep slaughtering innocent people. I think there should be conditions set in regard to U.S. support of Israel. And if they know that it's an existential threat, then stop slaughtering innocent people. It's not that difficult.
But let me ask you.
I'm in complete alignment with you here. I'm very America first. And I cannot believe that we are still betting this years afterward. And at first I was suspending my own judgment here, but things have gotten progressively worse, even in the last couple of months. And one thing that I really want to draw people's attention to is the fact that Bibi Netanyahu ignored intelligence prior to October 7th.
Yes, twice.
Attack was coming. He ignored it, which leads me to believe that perhaps he might have even wanted it, because there's such a thing called wag the dog phenomenon. When your country is attacked, or when you have a common enemy, a la 9/11, you get to rally the country behind you. And what did he want to distract people from? His own prosecutions. And by and large, he's been pretty successful in distracting the country from his own legal woes. Now he's being heralded and hailed as he travels around Israel. People don't want him to face justice anymore. So there's a huge element of self-interest here that we cannot overlook. And I do want to say something. You talk about the Canary Mission. They've discredited themselves. Their tactics reek of Joe McCarthy. The way that they target people simply for criticizing a government is absolutely unacceptable.
Right. And I want to say really quick on that, because I actually shared this post into our Her Take group chat, something that I saw where Anna and Cenk were recounting this information. And the person who shared it, their statement I agree with entirely. How despicable is this that no one is reporting on this right now anywhere in the mainstream? Can you imagine had it been any other group of people receiving death threats, any other voice from the liberal or progressive community who are receiving these death threats, the amount of rallying and virtue signaling that would have gotten behind them. But because it's Anna speaking out about the genocide in Gaza, and I will say that, you know, at the end of the day, what I really despise about this whole thing is they have found a very clever way to lump anybody who is against children being slaughtered in with pro-Hamas terrorists. They've done that in a very clever and very evil way, to where it seems like it's this one or the other thing. It's like you're either pro-Jewish or you're with the terrorists, right? May I propose a different solution? No, we are not. This is very, very clever by design that they have set it up to appear in that way. And as somebody who is pro-life, vehemently pro-life, I cannot stand here and say with human decency that I am not vehemently against the slaughter and execution of the children that's playing out on a mass scale in Gaza. And it's ridiculous to me that anybody who says that, who even dares to utter those words, are painted as like an anti-Semite or mentally ill. I remember when Theo Von took to his podcast to try to talk about this, and a bunch of publications painted him as mentally ill.
Oh, I know Theo Von. I know Theo Von. So I've been listening to his podcast a lot more lately, and he doesn't actually talk about politics often. He's really funny, and what stands out to me about Theo Von more than anything, man, that guy has like a very lovely, soft heart. And I love seeing that when it comes to especially male podcasters, because I do think that there's like this stereotype that all male podcasters are bros and they don't feel anything. And the thing with Theo Von is he's not political. He just sees what's happening and he knows it makes him feel some sort of way. And he wanted to like voice his opinion on that. But no, look, I don't begrudge other media figures for not jumping to my defense. I think people are afraid. They don't want to be a target. And after I came public with what Canary Mission is doing, there's another group. They have an account on X called Stop Anti-Semitism. They put a post up today that's just a complete and utter lie. They had posted about me before saying, Ana Kasparian goes full tinfoil hat, pushing the lie that Jews celebrated 9/11. I did not push a lie that Jews celebrated 9/11. I had drawn attention to a story that's well documented about how a witness, an American witness, had seen 5 people like on a rooftop, you know, taking photos of the World Trade Center on 9/11. She said that they appeared very happy. She said that they appeared to be celebrating. And then it turned out that the FBI suspected that these individuals, they were Israeli nationals. We found that out for sure. But the FBI suspected that they were also tied to Mossad. And so they had been detained for, I believe, a little over 2 months and questioned. The FBI eventually let them go back to Israel. And so I don't know if we can play those videos, if we're going to try to play those videos. Because this is what I was referring to. I never said Israel did 9/11.
Yeah, they call it the dancing Israelis, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So look, whether they were dancing or not, I mean, just who cares? That's like irrelevant. Right. What this woman saw and what she reported was what I was referring to. Take a look.
It began when this woman was watching the Twin Towers burning from her apartment in New Jersey. She noticed 3 men on top of a van, posing for pictures with the towers burning in the background.
And I could see that they were like happy. You know, they didn't look shocked to me. You know, they didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
The witness called police, who stopped the van hours later and arrested 5 men. All 5, it turns out, were Israeli.
Okay, so I responded to Stop Anti-Semitism by saying the following. I quote tweeted them. By the way, so many people were commenting on their post to say wait, hold on, what is she lying about? You know what I mean? Because people had the receipts and they were sharing the receipts in the comments in response to that post. And then they disabled comments. But what I had written, can we put that tweet up real quick, if you don't mind? Or that X post? All right. I said, to be fair, claims they were dancing is very offensive as there is no proof of such behavior, aside from the witness who called the authorities after she saw it happen. So she didn't say dancing, but she said that they were celebratory. FBI and police documents state the Israeli nationals claimed they were simply documenting the events on 9/11. By the way, one of them, after they went back to Israel and they were on a talk show, said that as well, that they were simply documenting the events. Which they definitely had no idea about ahead of time. They just they just have this incredible talent of predicting terrorist attacks before they happen. So I don't think that there was
you're implying there.
Yeah, that they might have known. Yeah, I think there's a possibility. There's a possibility that Mossad might have had info that they didn't share with our government.
You can understand how an Israeli would take great offense to that. Look, this is a part of the world. One of the most profound things I've ever heard about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is this is a part of the world where you had to forego who you could be for who you have to be, who you had to be. Meaning, and Moshe Dayan said, let the historians judge us. But for right now, this is about our survival and we have to do what we have to do. And so, when you talk about the PLO being peaceful, Anna, don't forget that the second Intifada, that wall.
Thank you, Brian. I was literally about to say, guys, we're not getting into any of the history where Israel tried to broker peace.
We have to.
That was the original. That was the original PLO. That was the original PLO. But that was the first iteration. The second iteration worked with the Israelis, did everything right. Okay, went along.
Hold on now. Remember though, in the second Intifada, people were blowing themselves to smithereens and killing countless Israelis in cafes and everything else. And that is why, and I remember when, I think it was Barbara Boxer or someone said, what is Sharon supposed to do? Write a letter to the editor? And they built that wall. And if you've been to Israel, there is a wall that just keeps on going. And it's been there since I think 2002. Not fun to live in the West Bank. I've been there. But that is a reality of living there. And I think at that point they said, we either build a wall or we keep getting blown to smithereens. So we have to take all of these things into context. And I do think, once again, that Israel is an existential struggle for the Jewish people. It always has been. One more quick word. That doesn't mean, Anna, that you don't say, hold on, who are we? If children on this magnitude are actually starving, if this many people are dying and suffering, as a people, who are we? Can we stop all of this for a second and make sure that kid, I don't care about all the debates, that kid's belly is empty and he's bleeding from his stomach or something like that, and I want to fill his belly and take care of that child. That's a human thing to do. So again, your outrage is important.
I think with the point that 2 seconds. The point that Brian's trying to make is that there's a whole second side to this that we're not telling, and it's important because it provides context. You are all correct, as Brian just said, in being outraged at children and innocents being slaughtered. The counter argument to that is, why are we only criticizing Israel for it? Where is our outrage where this is happening throughout the rest of the world? How come when the Jews do it, it's suddenly a problem? And they make a good point that our outrage should be applied evenly, not selectively. The history of this and all of the attempts at peace should be explained. And there are numerous attempts at it that were rejected by the Palestinian Authority of the time. And it is in fact biblical. So I think that the argument, Brian, tell me if I'm wrong here, that you're suggesting is that if Israel does not, for them, that if they don't do what they believe needs to be done, That is the end of Israel. Because and we've talked about this before with the Likud charter, but also what's in Hamas's charter is death to all Jews. And we don't say that when we bring up Likud. I think that's where it's like the nuance.
It's a brutal way to live, man. It's a brutal way to live.
Well, I think the countervailing argument is that 60,000 people have been killed and the job is essentially done at this point. It's been done for a while now. But Anna, I want to go back to a point that you made earlier about the 9/11 thing. Actually, I saw your tweet when it originally went out and I was very interested. And I want to first off start with the fact that I've been I admire advocacy on this so much. It's even shifted the needle for me. I have to say that. I did look into the 9/11 situation because I wanted to better learn this, understand what exactly went down. And apparently the FBI thoroughly investigated all the individuals you cited and found they had no ties or no possible inkling, no foreknowledge of the 9/11 attacks. So though, I just want to make sure that we put it out there though, because I did look into it very meticulously. And there was no evidence to suggest that they had any sort of pre-knowledge about the attacks.
We just got to be careful. That's all. And I'm with Bryan. I totally, and Lindy, I completely see your passion. We completely understand your outrage, and we need it, right? Because innocents are being killed. But there's
so what's the justification for what's happening in the West Bank? I'm just curious.
There's no justification.
Agreed.
I mean, so here's the thing. I hear people say that Zionism simply means that Jewish people have the right to exist and the right to their land. My roommate is Jewish. And so when I say there are people who are anti-Zionist, she's like, well, why is that? It's just the right to the land. But from my understanding and what you're saying, Anna, and especially with the admission of the greater Israel project and the expansionist agenda, that this is not possible for them. Israel cannot exist essentially without the slaughter and genocide of Gaza. At least at this point, that's what it seems to be.
I mean, that's the way it's being carried out. And I just disagree that a nuclear power, Israel, which is backed by another nuclear power, the United States, and by the way, of course, the United States is a military superpower that Israel enjoys the backing of. I just flatly reject the idea that Israel is fighting for its survival. If anything, Israel has been treated very differently, has enjoyed a double standard in the international community as opposed to every other country, including our own. I mean, the war crimes that were committed by our military after 9/11 really pale in comparison to the war crimes that we've seen carried out in both the West Bank and in Gaza. And so I flatly reject that this is about Israel's fight for survival. In fact, I think what Israel is doing right now really jeopardizes its survival, because if you look at younger generations in the United States, both left and right, they're horrified at what's going on. They're angry about what's going on, and they no longer want to support Israel. So eventually, Israel's days of enjoying just flat support from the United States, no matter what, that will end if they continue the conduct that we're seeing right now. Yes, in Gaza, yes, in the West Bank. But let's also not forget they're annexing land in southern Syria right now as we speak. And so I'm not going to treat Israel as if it's like this special country that gets to do whatever it wants on the international stage. They're carrying out war crimes, if they're carrying out actions that we've been very critical of when other countries, let's say Russia, do it, why does Israel get a pass exactly? And more importantly, why is it incumbent upon the American taxpayer to bankroll these atrocities? That's my issue here. And look, going back to the heart of this story, right, which is the threats against people like me for saying the kinds of things I'm saying right now. Number one, I'm an American. Number two, you're not going to shut me the fuck up. You're just not. Okay, I get to enjoy my constitutional protections.
Anna,
that's it.
That is not a surprising statement from you. I love it. Let me ask you though, Anna. Let me ask you. Yeah. It's important. Look for a second. October 7th. This is one of those buttons where you go stop everything. You came in. You killed children. You killed people in their pajamas. You killed families. And you took a bunch of hostages, including children, old people, and everything else. And by the way, used all that money from Qatar to build 500 miles of tunnels, an underground army, and all that stuff. The question then becomes, let me ask you, what would have been for you an acceptable response for Israel? Because when you fight in that kind of close quarters combat, and when Hamas is wiring a lot of those buildings, booby trapping those buildings to begin with, it's very, very difficult to conduct warfare without taking massive casualties. When those tunnels are booby trapped, when those houses are booby trapped, it's when people are sniping at you. It's pretty much. I've talked to a lot of like tier 1 special forces guys who are like, they don't really have a dog in the fight. They're like, dude, you can't fight that war without leveling those buildings.
There have been other special forces or members who have been part of, special forces or have conducted those types of operations who say the opposite. I'm not a military expert, so I'm not going to purport to know what's right and what's wrong. But here's what I know. Here's what I know without a shadow of a doubt. Okay. The IDF's internal documents, which were just obtained by an Israeli magazine, 972, indicate, this is the IDF's documentation, indicate that 83% of people killed in Gaza, civilians, 83%.
I believe it.
Okay. That's unacceptable. Okay. That is unacceptable. This is the reason why in every interview featuring an Israeli diplomat or some Israeli, mouthpiece propagandist, when they're asked specifically, okay, what is the civilian to combatant death ratio or kill ratio? You get a different answer, or you'll get some evasive nonsense because they know what the reality is. This is about wiping Palestinians out from that land, whatever remains of the Palestinian people. I mean, they're talking about it out loud. That's the thing that frustrates me. I don't know why Americans refuse to take what the Israeli government says out loud seriously, because everything they said that they were going to do from the very beginning, they're doing. They don't see these people in Gaza as human beings, whether they're children, whether they're women, whether they're elderly people. So yeah, October 7th was awful. They Hamas committed atrocities in Israel. There's no question. But there are some big questions that need to be answered, including why did it take hours, literally hours, for the IDF to respond and save people's lives? We're talking about one of the most sophisticated militaries. You now have IDF soldiers. I'm not saying this. This is testimony on camera from IDF soldiers who say that they were told to stand down on the morning of October 7th. What is that about?
I don't think so, Anna. I just don't believe
it's not me saying it. It's literally an IDF soldier who's testifying about it.
People say a lot of things, but for the most part, I don't think that in any way the Netanyahu government, the idea that they allowed the Palestinians to come in and kill 1,200 of their countrymen is very cynical. I just don't buy it.
Brian, there was literally a New York Times expose on this, though. Like I wasn't going to cover this segment, so I didn't pull up the link. But the New York Times reported that they had advanced knowledge of this over a course of a year. This is not something that just, suddenly happened. No idea. Like, this is not just the IDF saying. This is actually, the New York Times is still considered to be the most venerable media institution in America. So, and I also wanted to follow up on something you said. It's not necessarily about Israel's survival. I want to be very specific here. It's about Bibi Netanyahu's survival.
Yes, I agree.
This is such an important point. And that is why he also fought so vociferously for Trump's reelection. Because he knew
I would agree with you, Lindy. I would agree with you.
He would have more of a blank check to do whatever he wanted.
But I would agree with you, Lindy, if Netanyahu hadn't been consistent his entire life. Bibi Netanyahu was part of Sarayat Matkal. That is like the equivalent of Delta Force he was in the same unit, I think, as Ehud Barak. He's been fighting on the front lines for Israel. His brother was killed in Entebbe. His father raised him to realize that the only way forward for an Israeli is through strength. He's always been very consistent as a warrior. He's always looked at the world as a very dangerous place. And if you are not strong as an Israeli, you die and cease to exist. That I think Netanyahu has philosophically been very consistent.
Okay, Bryan, respectfully, just because he's been consistent with this barbarism, does that absolve his barbarism?
It's I suppose, I always think about what it's like to be a warrior, and I go back to that thing where you have to be, it's a world where you have to forego who you could be for who you have to be. And maybe that's what I'm looking at.
I'm just trying to understand. Are you saying that because he's been brutal over a course of decades, it's okay? I just don't think so. I'm somebody who is deeply sympathetic. They couldn't have found a potentially stronger ally, but every single thing that they've done since October 7th has made me recoil at best and be horrified at worst. And I want to say that there's an Israeli embassy in New York reached out to me and offered me a free trip to Israel that I declined. I suppose that they were trying to recruit me. They said that they weren't expecting anything but for me to keep an open mind.
Lindy, I asked Lauren about this. The
mission was to recruit me as a potential supporter because they know, I'm very vocal online. But I'm just not going to be a propaganda piece for anybody. That's just not who I am.
It sounds like Hamas and Iran were very successful in their mission. I think that their goal was to pull a lot of Palestinian children out of rubble and outrage the world. And Israel's massive response here has been very, very good for its enemies. And I think it's been very bad for the Jewish diaspora in Israel.
I actually agree with that.
I agree with that as well. Yeah, I do agree with that.
I think the person who is single-handedly most responsible for anti-Semitism today is ironically Bibi Netanyahu and his actions.
I would have to agree with that part. And but Bryan, I tend to lean more to your line of thinking. And it's like, it's tough.
Myself shaking my head.
Dog eat dog world kind of a thing. His background and what he's been through. I completely agree with you guys that I am horrified by Bibi's ongoing response. In the beginning, it made sense to me, and now it's like, oh my God, dude, stop. And
I know we're 60,000 people in. Like we should have been done 59,000 people ago.
Here's the other argument, and then I do want us to move on.
Yeah.
The other argument is release the hostages then.
Yeah.
Release. You want it to end? Release the hostages.
Yeah.
Release them. So do we have? Okay, I think have we given final thoughts? Because we've gone on a long time about some of this stuff.
One last thing, there was an Israeli officer who said for every Israeli dead, there should be 50 Palestinian dead. And I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that
last week. So they don't even see Palestinians as equal human beings.
Death to the Jews, death to all Jews, globalize. This is I get it. It's horrifying. I just think when we're only showing the evil of one side, because we could be like, did you see what that soldier said? I could show you it's similar.
Yeah, but
look, I wouldn't have a problem if Israel. Look, I wouldn't have a problem if Israel were specifically going after combatants. I do not believe that they're just going after combatants. When you have an influx of toddlers showing up at the hospitals, every one of which has been bombed, by the way, with bullet holes in the head, bullet holes in the chest, obviously they're being targeted by snipers. They're toddlers. You can't argue, oh my God, one side is evil and one side isn't. No. If you're talking about combatants and you're making that argument about, what's happening in Gaza, okay, that's a fair argument. But when you're essentially conflating the Palestinian people with terrorism, saying they're all terrorists, that essentially justifies the mass slaughter of innocent people. And that's what we're seeing. Again, 83% of the people killed in Gaza, based on the IDF's own documentation, are civilians.
And by the way, it's not just Palestinians and children. It's also Americans. World Central Kitchen.
Humanitarian workers.
What's his full name? People
journalists
who are going over there to provide humanitarian help are being killed. These kitchens, these mobile kitchens are being targeted. What did they do wrong? What did they do to deserve the hell that Israel has rained down upon them? I just don't understand this.
Final thoughts, guys. Sorry,
what frustrates me is I never know what to believe anymore. Let me give you an example of what children are being killed, absolutely. But you hear a lot of this stuff about a bunch of kids with bullet wounds to their head. And
yeah, from American doctors, by the way.
I know they say this. The IDF is targeting children. I just want people to know something about. There's a detail that people don't know. The Israeli sniper rifle. When you shoot, if you were to shoot a child in the head with that sniper rifle, I've done some hunting. There would be no head left. What happens is your head explodes. You don't get a bullet wound in your head. Your head explodes. That's a gruesome thing to talk about. But so when I hear that, I kind of scratch my head and I say, again, I'm being all this information, all these anecdotal stories. What I do is this, and to all of your point, Gaza, a lot of Gaza looks like the surface of the moon. There are a lot of children dying. There are a lot of people suffering. Sometimes, can we just stop for a second and make sure these civilians get the water and the food and the shelter they need? Can we get a second? Can we just catch our breath as human beings? Because it's the decent thing to do. Let's hit that button, that stop everything button that we should have hit in October 7th, which is, this cannot stand. This is what you did to Israel. Hamas has got to go, bring back the hostages. But the same goes for when you've got all these children who are starving and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know, man. You know what? I don't know. How about that?
You'll never get, as you said, it's biblical. So
and we'll continue to rage. Lindy, you've got a point. I don't know, man.
You actually bring up a really good point, because right now it's on a scale of 1 to 5. Hammond is like,
last thought on this one. Last thought, okay?
I'm sorry, but this just came out in the last couple of days. Right now, Gaza is like under famine. Number 5, as in it's not approaching disaster, it's failure. As in people will die no matter what, whether help comes or not. Like, it's done. It's a travesty. I don't think you should be using famine as a war technique. I just don't.
I agree. Yeah.
No one disagrees with you guys. I think the point we're trying to make is, let's not solely target Israel when all of this evil is occurring.
Hey, I hate Hamas too. I think they're fucking awful.
Biblical. It's biblical.
Anna, okay, it may be biblical. Wait, 1 second. I haven't had my final thoughts. It may be biblical according to the Schofield Bible. Anyone who doesn't know about that should look into it. And also, Anna, I just want to say, I love you. You are so freaking brave. You have more passion in your pinky finger than most people have in their entire bodies. And the fact that you are receiving death threat on death threat on death threat, and you show up in the camera, you're looking these people who are making these threats in the face, indirectly through the screen, and you're like, bring it on. I'm not going to shut up. I love you. And thank you for the children.
Well,
I think you're eminently fair.
I'm trying to. Thank you, Lindy. I'll talk to you guys later, man.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye, Brian.
See you later.
All right, so we're going to let Brian go, and I'm going to do Bolton. All right, guys, so we've got time for one more, and it's pretty important. All right, so it's something you don't see every day. The FBI just raided the home of John Bolton, the John Bolton, hawk of all hawks guy, a man who never saw a war he didn't like. And they were looking for classified documents. Maybe they found some, maybe they didn't. But the question is, what's really going on here? When the government starts raiding homes of its own former national security advisors, is that law enforcement or is it power politics? So, Lindy, what do you think is happening here? This is pretty crazy.
Jillian, this is pretty crazy. I have to say the entire world was pretty much shocked when we woke up one morning and realized that John Bolton, the Walrus, as I like to call him, was raided. This has been a very difficult topic for me because it's hard for me to truly grasp this. And I don't want to just be a partisan mouthpiece for the Republican Party. Frankly, I'm not even a registered Republican yet. So I want to be fair to what's going on. And let everyone know, John Bolton has been one of the most vigorous critics of the Trump administration, not just in the second term, but over the course of the past, I would say like 8 years, ever since he left the Trump administration. Not only that, he wrote a book. He wrote a book about the first term when people were clamoring for him to testify in Trump's impeachment. He withheld that information, wrote it in his book, in my opinion, to sell more books instead of testifying against Trump. Anna, you said something in front of
No, of course. Yeah, that's what they always do. They save the deets to profit off of it after
exactly
the administration.
to milk the book sales. So right now he is under investigation. We don't know for sure because we haven't seen the specific documents yet. But the widespread, the conventional wisdom is he is under investigation for intel that he included in his book. There have also been allegations that he was sharing intel with his wife and daughter. We don't know if that's true. That's pure speculation. But this also begs the question, is this truly the retribution presidency that Trump promised? J.D. Vance went on Meet the Press yesterday and spoke with Kristen Mulker, and he said this has nothing to do with the fact that John Bolton has been very aggressively critiquing the Trump administration. And that he said we should not be throwing people in prison willy-nilly. That's a direct quote from J.D. Vance. I really hope so. I really hope that's the case because I think the essence, the beauty of America is our freedom of speech. People should not be chilled from expressing themselves because they are afraid of retribution. And we cannot talk about this without providing the additional context of Adam Schiff, who's the current senator of California, and Letitia James, whom I'm really not a fan of. She's Attorney General of New York. But I must say that both of them are right now under serious investigation for alleged mortgage fraud. Legal experts say there's actually not much to that, and they're not really going to face severe repercussions because apparently 1 out of 3 mortgage applicants have done what they've done. So whatever they did is a fairly common thing. And the act in question is marking the residents that they're applying, the residents for which they're applying for a mortgage. They said that was their primary residence. But apparently 1 out of 3 Americans does this. So the question is, ladies, I want to hear what you think. Do you think this is an act of retribution, or do you think this is an act of justice in that people with top security clearances obviously should be very cognizant and very judicious with classified documents? Or do you think this is a targeted attack from the Trump administration against its critics?
Who wants to go first?
I'll just say, look, following word that Bolton's home was raided, there were other reporters, Matt Taibbi being one of them, indicating that this is going to be the first of many. So that kind of tips off the fact that this seems to be retaliation against Bolton for being so critical toward Trump. And by the way, let me just say, what's kind of funny about this situation is I am not a fan of John Bolton at all. I wish John Bolton was not part of Trump's first administration. I think it was a big mistake having him serve in Trump's first term. The reason why I can't stand Bolton is because he consistently wanted to drag Trump into foreign wars. He wanted Trump to do strikes against Iran in his first term. And to Trump's credit, he refused to do it. And, in his first term, obviously, he bombed Iran's nuclear sites very recently. But I gave Trump a lot of credit for that. But you could tell there was tension because here you have a war hawk. And then you have a president who's willing to do the bidding of the war hawk. And Bolton's been very critical of Trump ever since. Now, even though I sided with Trump on those conflicts with Bolton, I still do not want the president of the United States to use his power to essentially target individuals who have been critical of him, including people I hate like John Bolton. You know what I'm saying? So what I am reading right now, and I think this story needs to develop further with more evidence before we know for sure, but what I'm reading right now is that Bolton got permission to publish what he published in his book. And if that is the case, then this is just retribution from Trump because of the fact that Bolton is critical of him. And if that is in fact the case, if that is proven, we are in incredibly choppy, dangerous waters because we cannot live in a society that allows political figures to viciously go after their critics, as much as we might even hate those critics, right? I mean, a raid is a serious thing. And it happened in the early morning hours. Think about how terrifying that is if you haven't done anything wrong and you didn't deserve that. So I'm going to wait for the story to develop a little further. I'm going to see who else the Trump administration targets, if anyone else. And I don't want to slip into a scary authoritarian country if it is in fact proven later that this was just about retribution and nothing more. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. Anna, you bring up a really good point. I actually agree with 100% what you said. I just want to add to it that it's not just about the book, though. It's also about the leaking to the family members. So we don't know about that. We're waiting more information. But I think that's actually a pretty serious violation. For someone who is entrusted with American intel, you should not be giving it to random people. And there are also allegations of him doing business with various countries in Qatar. And I do have those graphics. And Connor, I don't know if you want to play the clip, the Jesse Waters clip about the other people that Trump could potentially go after.
Well, I want to say one thing to you guys real quick, because I've been having a real hard time getting to the bottom of it, actually. And I was going to ask you about it during this segment. And I'm continuing to try to get to the bottom of it now. And I'm unsuccessful. But apparently this is not a new probe. So I keep reading that this has been going on since 2020,
correct.
And it was initiated by Biden. That's the part that makes me a little bit like, well, I don't really get how.
That's, Jillian, that's such a good point.
But I cannot get to the bottom of it. Like, I keep looking and it's like, well.
No, that's true.
Following the transition to the Biden administration, the DOJ paused the investigation, but then it was revived by Kash Patel. So I can't find the exact timeline is what I'm saying, but I remember this in 2020. And that's the part that I find kind of suspicious is this is crossed administrations at this point on both sides.
Jillian, you are completely on target. The Biden administration basically put it to bed. They decided not to prosecute the crime. And I cannot frame this argument without presenting the other side, which is that lawfare is wrong, whatever party is doing it. And I still firmly believe that Democrats went after Trump in 4 different jurisdictions because they did not trust the American people not to vote for him. And these are conversations that I had with fellow donors. Okay, this is not a figment of my imagination. These were discussions that I had with donors, party official, party poobahs who said, oh, Trump's going to be in jail by 2024. We have nothing to worry about. They were counting on people like Fonnie Willis in Georgia, like Tish James in New York, like Jack Smith in DC. And also the overturning election, they were counting at least one of the 4 cases working out in their favor. Actually, that's actually one of the reasons why they didn't urgently push Biden aside at the very beginning, because they hoped that the courts would sort it out. And that's actually why they hated Merrick Garland so much, because they thought that he wasn't acting fast enough. He waited 2 years to appoint Jack Smith as a special prosecutor. So they were definitely counting on lawfare to take care of what should have been what should have been decided and adjudicated in the court of public opinion by the American people.
Yeah, I mean, really quick. I know we have to wrap. Like, lawfare was thoroughly weaponized against Trump, and if Trump is the leader that I want to believe that he is, that in my opinion he has shown himself to be, at least in certain situations, that he is not going to abide by the strategy that an eye for an eye. You know, at the end of the day, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. That's a saying that my mom used to say to me all the time growing up. And if we're now in a position where we are literally just retaliating for the sake of retaliation, that's not the party that I would have voted for. That's not the party that I believe in. That's not the party that I claim. I don't think that is the case based on what we're hearing, although we will need to kind of wait it out until we hear more information. But if this is something that was initiated from Biden and they're just simply picking it back up and maybe looking at it with a little bit more scrutiny, that is perfectly justified. If it is, on the other hand, some type of weaponized lawfare against him, then that's just shocking to me that after everything the president went through with lawfare, with trying to have people, not vote for him, having his name discredited, the possibility of serious, even jail time, serious implications, and he managed to escape it all, for the most part at least. If he was to then weaponize that against someone else, that isn't the party that I voted for. And I genuinely don't believe that is in the character of Donald Trump. We will need to wait and see, but that's just my 2 cents there.
I just want to give you all a lot of credit for the open-mindedness and for not changing your mind depending on which party is engaging in the bad act. Because to me, that's a sign of honesty and truth-seeking. And I'm proud to work with you, ladies. So thank you.
That's so kind. Anna, you inspired me to be more, you just challenge me. You really do. And few people do that. Thank you for lighting a fire under my butt.
Thank you. I
do
feel the same way about you ladies. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Amy, darling, I have to say one thing. He literally said on the campaign trail, though, I am your retribution, which is why I kind of prefer the Trump model.
I know.
The first he said, you know, he went all over the place. He said, lock her up, you know, let's throw Hillary Clinton in jail. But
revenge time for things they did. For targeting them for things they did that they can find traces for. And there's going to be a difference between that targeted, you know, like this is something that was not prosecuted because they were protected by a previous administration. And I understand that him saying things like revenge time, retribution time, it's not necessarily good optics. But if he's saying that with reference to actual crimes that were committed that were possibly concealed or overlooked by previous administration, I get what he's saying.
I'm just saying that's what he said. His explanation for the retribution comment is that by retribution, I mean success. If so, then great. Please retribute away. It's not actually a word. You know what I mean?
That is the one thing that I like that you point out is if there's something there, then he should be able to go after it, whether he has a bone to pick with them or not. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, when people attack you, there is a time to fight fire with fire. If there's nothing there, as mentioned, Amy, as you said so eloquently, and you're just weaponizing the justice system for your own personal vendetta, that's really scary. But that's where I think we wait, we see what's actually there. We see where this plays out. It's not new, and it's very confusing and muddy as to when it was paused, why it was started, and so on and so forth. But unless we have any final additional thoughts, I'm going to wrap us out of this one, team.
Let's do it. Let's wrap it up.
All right, Anna, where do we find you?
You can find me on Minect. You can also find me over at Substack, Kasparian.substack.com, and on YouTube /The Young Turks, Ana Kasparian on all socials, and I'll see you there.
Lindy
Li on Minect and Lindy Li on all social media platforms. Thank you, guys.
Ames?
You guys can message me on Minect. You can also check out my show, Dangerous Conversations, on YouTube. And I am Amy Dangerfield across every platform, although I'm still figuring out how to use X. I will say that. It seems like the main purpose of that platform is to fight with people. So I'm still figuring that out.
That's a sport, though. I like it. It's an underrated form of cardio. I enjoy it. Yeah. Well, all right. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and we will see you guys next week.